Hello, 3 designers. I'm Joshua St. John, 3Design NYC on the forum, and this is the video demonstration series. Today's demonstration is called 3-Stone Microset Ring, and we're going to construct the ring shown in this rendering on the screen. So let's hop right into the 3Design workspace and start our construction. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is save as. I'm going to call this one 3-Stone Microset VDS. Perfect. Now I'm going to start off by making a sketch on the front view plane, and I'm going to rename it Front View. And next I'm going to put a ring size in, size 6.5, as a visual for me to lay out my stones. So I'm going to hop out of the sketch and go over to the jeweler's bench and put my center stone. I'm going to set it to a 1 carat center and drag it up off the finger. Like so. Put it at 12.5 and validate. And next I'm going to construct another plane. The way I do that is I'm going to click on my top view plane and then choose the plane tool from support. Now I'm going to change the orientation of the plane and I'm going to set it into position. Changing the size of the plane also to, let's say, 20. And bringing it over on the X, I think 6 should be a decent number. We'll try -6. I usually build left to right. And drag it down slightly. Change the angle. We'll go ahead and call it the side stone plane. Perfect. So I'm going to choose this plane now and make another stone. This time keeping it at a 1/2 carat and validate. Now mine's lined up okay, but if I wanted to make an adjustment, I would make an adjustment to the plane. So if I wanted to move it over, I'd bring it over on the X. I'm actually going to change the orientation of the plane as well to just flipped or 180-degree rotation so I can read it like so. Validate, and when I recompute, you'll see the stone will slide over slightly. And I think that'll work. They may end up being a little close, but I can always go back and adjust that later. So I'm going to hide all my planes, including the side plane. And I'm going to mirror just using the tree, selecting the side view plane, mirror the stone to the other side, like so. Let's take a look at our tree. We have the front view sketch with a ring on it. We have the center stone. We have the side stone plane. We have the side stone and the mirror of the side stone. So back to the sketch we go. I'm going to draw in some more curves for my shank. Going to use the symmetrical vertical tool and drop, let's say, 1, make it an open curve, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll go with 6 to start. And now I'm going to go and refine this shape like so. Maybe move this over a little. I'm going to take the ring size and freeze it because I'm not going to actually use the ring size as a rail. It'll probably be used for a cutter a little later on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a scale, but click keep the original. And I'm going to scale in this curve. So now I know these two curves are matching. So what I'm going to do here is I want the inner curve to be just inside of the ring size. So we're going to go like this. And just like that. Perfect. Now this part of the ring is actually going to serve as the prong, this part of the shank here. So I want this shank to come up right below the girdle. And it needs to be thick enough here because we're going to set stones onto the shank later. And as you notice, as I pull this, it's distorting down here, so you have to be mindful of that. Now I'll bring this point down to here. I want to leave at least 1.5 millimeters, probably better closer to 2 millimeters thickness at all times. And also on this curve, I'm going to set a diamond there, so I don't want the curve to be so extreme that the diamond can't be set. So we'll go like this. Keep working it out and just continue to refine the shape of the shank. Great. I like the way that looks. Now, this curve is going to be my path curve, and I'm going to have it be setting the thickness. So I'll move it out to 1.5. Validate. This should be a familiar process to all of you. And next up, I'm going to draw one cross section. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Validate, and I'm going to move the cross section over so it's easier to work with later. 20. Validate. I'm going to turn my grid snaps on for a second and just clean up that cross section a little bit, giving 1 point, 2 point, 3 point there, and the same. So we get a nice rectangle with filleted edges. And I'm going to now leave the sketch and save. So I want to mirror this curve over the center, the front view plane, like so. So I selected the plane from the tree, select the curve, and then mirror. Validate. Now I have this parametric curve that corresponds to this sketch curve here. And we'll go ahead and we'll do our initial sweep. We don't have to path auto orientation because all of these curves are copies of each other. And we'll choose the one section and validate. So what we're going to do is we're going to define the entire ring and then go back and refine it into the design that we want. So next up, I'm going to choose to put the belt on the center stone. And for that belt, I'm not going to create a bottom belt because I'm going to have the kind of trellis effect coming up like this. But I am going to position it, and I'm going to set it to a custom shape. I'm going to use the same cross section actually as I used for the sweep of the shank, but I'm going to change the ratio of it to 1.2 millimeter, 1 millimeter thick here, and 1.2 millimeter thick in that direction. Look at it from the top, size it up so it's just inside the girdle. Maybe a little high. We'll drop it down a smidge. I may want to move up the center stone a little bit at this point. So I'm going to validate, and I'm going to do just that. I'm going to move up the center stone just a touch to 12.8, let's say, and recompute. And as a result, I also need to move up the side stone a touch. I want the girdle kind of to come just below the girdle of the center stone. There we go. Perfect. Now the reason I made a new plane is because if I had moved this stone into position with the move rotate scale, I would no longer be able to add a belt to it in its position because it would be recognized as a move rotate scale and not as a stone. So that is why I made the plane, even if it seems like a little extra work. It saves you work in the end. So I'm going to add the same cross section here, and again change the ratio. This time we'll go 1 millimeter thick, 0.8 millimeter. Reverse that, 0.8 millimeter thick and 1 millimeter. The bottom belt I'm going to get rid of completely, and I'm going to bring up the height. This is a nice trick. If I choose the side stone plane, like so, and then I hit this button right here, it gives me a planar view to that plane. So I can adjust this the same way I did as the top view. It's a little high still. I think we can drop it down just like that and validate. Now I'm just going to double click on this mirror of the side stone, hit that arrow, hit the plus sign. Now I want to mirror it across, and I'm not going to do another mirror. What I'm going to do is double click on this stone, which is a mirror, which is the mirror, and I'm going to add the belt to the mirror list and validate. So now I have the same mirror, but it has two things in its list. Validate. Great. So back to the sketch, and I'm going to add in the curves that will eventually make up my prongs. And this curve, I'll just drop, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 control points to start. A couple extra. I may want to get rid of them, but good to have them there. Get rid of my snap to grid. And now this curve needs to correspond to the ring size exactly, because it's going to serve as the size for the top of the finger. So bring it through like so, and just like that. Now I'm going to adjust this curve to be 3D. So I'm going to look at it from the side view, and I'm going to take its control points and drag them out. I guess I'll do these 4 at a time using the move command. Bring it out in a Z so it lines up. Like so. Look at it from the top. I want the prong to be right about there. So I'm going to go about there on height, so 2.3. And we'll go 3. That should work. Turn it back to the front view. I'm going to use that deep alignment tool we've touched on. So click all of those points and do a deep alignment to them so they all are on the same Z now. And I think that'll be a good rough curve, taking the last 3 points and moving them out to 0.75. And validate. I'm going to make the cross section for the prong have 6 points as well. Go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Validate. And I'm going to move that off to the other side. Over, we'll go negative 15 and down negative 4. Perfect. I'm going to turn my grid snaps back on and give myself another cross section, more of a square this time. Perfect. Okay, so now I have this cross section. I'm going to make 3 copies of it. So keep the original, and actually 2 copies because that'll give me a total of 3. And validate. The top section I'm going to resize to 1.5 millimeter by 1.5 millimeter. The next section I'm going to scale to 2 millimeter by 2 millimeter. And the final section I'm going to scale to 2.5 millimeter by 3 millimeter. And validate. I'm going to leave the sketch and I'm going to use a tool. I'm actually going to go and hide everything so you can see, except for these 3 new cross sections and this curve. I'm going to use a tool in the solid module called position curve. And with this tool, I first select the curve I want to position, and then this is the icon. And then I choose where I want to position it, and I want to position it on this path. And you see I get the red dot here and the red dot here. They match. If I was to move this, it would move its positioning. For now, I'm happy with the positioning. I may choose to change it later. I'm going to validate. And I'm going to do the same for the other 2 curves. This one in the middle, validate. And lastly, this one on the end. And validate. I'm going to use these cross sections as a loft. So 1, 2, and 3, loft, normal interpolation, optional guide of this path curve, and validate. Okay, so we have a problem with the loft, but we'll fix that in a bit. Let's show the belts, the sweep, and the mirror. You can show the stones as well, and basically just look at our construction so far. Perfect. So I'm going to change the way this position is moved to side and see if that fixes the interpolation. It does. It fixes it slightly, but I'm still having this problem here. So what I want to try to do is take the first position curve and bring it down to this area here and validate. Now when we recompute, we're going to get a loft through there, and we're still having the problem. I'm going to change the loft to fill, and that'll bring it back up to the top. And I'm going to keep trying to adjust this problem by moving this point. I want it to go to about 1.5 millimeters there, but I need to get rid of this kink. And we're getting a little better. Okay, so I'm going to hide that for the time being. The reason I did it this way is because I don't want these things to overlap. Like if I was to take this loft and just mirror it to the other side, they're going to overlap completely. But what I actually want to have happen is one come above and the other go below. So that's why I chose to loft it like this. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to mirror all of these features to the other side. The first one, and then the second, and finally the third. And these are all parametric to each other. I'm going to hide those last mirrors, and I'm going to start cleaning the loft up. We'll go ahead and we'll take this section, and I'm going to make it into more of a round. My grid snaps are on. I'm going to turn those off and change it into a round cross section. Doesn't have to be perfectly round, just pretty close. I'm going to resize it 1.2 by 1.2. Validate. Now when I recompute this loft, starting to smooth out. This next section here, I want to be more of an oval. So I'm going to change its nature here, like so. And I'm going to scale it. We'll make this one width of 1.3 and a height of 1.2. Actually, make it 1.5 on the width. Validate. Recompute. Perfect. And the last shape, I don't want to move that much. In fact, I may achieve what I want with this curve by adjusting the path curve like so. Try my recompute now. I want to see that ring size. There it is. We'll freeze that. And perfect. That third position curve, this one right here, position curve 3, I'm actually going to change where it lines up and move it over to here so it's more in the middle. And you see as I adjust the location, the cross section moves on the position. So I'm going to have it be right in the middle like so. Validate. In this last cross section, I'm going to change the scale and shape of as well. Change it to height, we'll do 2 millimeter, and width we'll do 1.8 millimeter. Validate, recompute. All right, so let's do the other prong, the other side. So I'm going to hide everything and then show all of those mirrors. Show and show. All I need to do to create the overlapping effect is to take this curve here and move it slightly over on the Y, say a 0.5 millimeter. We'll go with 0.6 millimeter and validate. Now I'm going to loft 1, 2, 3, loft, normal interpolation, optional guide, preview, fill, preview, and positioning on the side. Nice. Validate. So now I have the loft on one side, and on the other side I have my second loft with a different third profile. So in order to show the overlap, I'm going to show both of my mirror planes. This is a little bit complicated. What I'm going to do is actually mirror both of the prongs to one side, validate, and you see they're just overlapping because this side is the same as this side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror it again, but this time across the front view plane, validate, and then I'm going to go and delete that mirror 7, that first mirror. And now we have one coming over the other. And I can adjust that later. What I really wanted to do here is just to show the basic form of the ring completely, and then we'll go back and we'll refine it and jewel it. So let's take a look at the tree and clean up our history a little bit. I'm going to show everything. I'm going to hide the sketch only. The sidestone plane I can actually delete because I have it right there. The mirror, keep. The sweep I'm going to rename shank. I'm going to rename the belt center stone and side stone. And the position curves I can delete because they're all inside of the loft. The mirrors I can delete as well because they're inside the second loft. And the move, rotate, scale I'm going to rename overlap section. I'm going to rename the first loft left prong, and the second loft I'm going to rename right prong. Perfect. The first thing I'm going to do is go back into my sketch, and I'm going to show the curves that I've made as well as the first cross section I made. In this cross section I'm going to make a few more copies of as well, keeping the original and making a second copy. Move it down a little further, validate. For the second section, I want it to be slightly curved because this is going to be the top section where the shank meets with the belt of the side stone and serves as the prong. A shape like that to start, and the bottom shape I want to make into a half round because it's going to be the bottom of the shank. I do not need to worry about the dimensions of these curves because the dimensions are going to be set by the path curves of the sweep. So I'm going to double click back on the shank and start adding more cross sections. The first cross section I added, I'm going to change the position of it to position 2. That's the square section. Holding Control, I'm going to choose the square cross section again and position it at position 9. I'm going to hold Control, choose the curved cross section, put it at position 0 and position 11. Now I notice my orientation is not correct, so I'm going to flip it 180. So now I have the curved cross section, the square cross section, the curved cross section, and the square cross section. And lastly, I'm going to hold Control and add the half round section in that position and in position 7. So now it goes curved, square, half round, square, curved, and validate. Perfect. Next up, I'm going to refine the path curves, and I'll do that by adjusting the second point down, moving it out to 2 millimeter. Recompute, see what this looks like, and move this out to 2.2 millimeter. Recompute. Nice. And this bottom section I'll move to 1.4. This one 1.3. Recompute. Looks good. And now I want it to meet with the belt. So I'll place it here and place it here. Recompute. All right, it's starting to look good. I think I am going to change this cross section here slightly and make it curved on the one side. Like so. And perhaps it is also a little thick. Move it over like this. Move this one over a touch too. Recompute. And great. I'm happy with the shank. I'm going to leave the sketch. I can hide all my cross sections. Hide the entire sketch. And now I'm going to go ahead and refine the prongs. I'm going to start with the prong curve, which is here. I'm going to just change these points, give it the flow that I want, not playing with the Z yet, remembering to respect the finger size. So I'm going to show the finger and freeze that. Let's bring it all the way down to here. It's respecting, and recompute. See how that looks? Gets a little jumbled up in here. Looks like maybe I have too many control points. I'm going to slide this point up here and here like this. Recompute. Nice and smooth now. I'm actually fairly happy with the overlap, but I'm going to adjust it anyway so you can see what this move overlap section will do for us. If I want it to overlap more, I can increase it like so and recompute, and the overlap will be more extreme. The last thing is I think it thins out a little bit quickly here. I want it to stay thicker and probably solid up to about this point. So in my first loft, left prong, I'm going to take position curve 3 and bring it up to this point Try that, recompute. And position curve 2, I'm going to need adjusting as well, but keep in mind that's also going to adjust the overlap section. So I'm going to bring this up to right where they're going to overlap. And position curve 1, I'm going to bring up right to where it meets the prong. Validate. I'm going to zoom out and hide my planes before I do my recompute because I think this recompute is going to work nicely. And this will recompute everything including those advanced mirrors that I did. And sure enough, I get a nice effect. If anything, the overlap section is a little far now, so I'll bring it back to that 0.7, validate, and recompute. Nice. Pretty happy with the ring so far. Couple last details I need to attend to. I'm going to take the shank and apply a multi-bulge to this surface and this surface. The multi-bulge I'll do 0.5, half millimeter, validate. Keeps it solid. It's kind of a little funky here, but I'm alright with that. I like it. The prong is going to serve as a shared prong, so I do need to adjust this position here. And the best way to do that is with the path curve adjusting the Z at this point. Let's move it over. See how it comes like this. Half millimeter or so. I think just a touch more and we'll have it. Can push it. We'll do negative 0.25, quarter millimeter. Recompute. By doing this, I've changed where the overlap is happening, and I want to address this. So I'll use position curve 2 and move it slightly up. Recompute. Now, because I changed these points, the overlap is happening in a different location. So what I want to do is adjust here as well. In doing this, I need to be very aware of the ring size, because as I change the X, it's adjusting the ring size, but it's fine. So I will just recompute and see how that affects the overlap. Great, that's the overlap I'm looking for. Going to leave the sketch and save, and clean up my tree a little bit more, renaming the multi-bulge shank. Now that I'm happy with both of my lofts, I'm actually going to do a Boolean operation. Boolean those two together. Rename it left prong. And this mirror here, I'm going to open up the tree, and I have mirror 7. I had mirrored the right prong and the left prong as lofts. I'm going to double click there and trash both the right prong and the left prong and just add left prong. And when I validate and recompute, it will update both mirrors. So now this is a Boolean solid, and this is a Boolean solid. I'll go ahead and at this time Boolean those together as well, and just call them prongs. Center prongs. Great, so this is a Boolean solid. It's good to go. I don't think I'm going to have to do more adjustment on it. I think I'm happy with my seats as well, so I can Boolean all those together. But if you notice, this is the mirror now. So what I actually have to do is trash the side stone out of the mirror. Validate, so it's just the belt. Now choose all 3 of the belts and Boolean those together into seats. Validate. So now I have seats, I have center stone prongs, and I have the shank. The overlap section I'm not going to adjust again, so I can delete that. This mirror I can delete, as it is the third sweep curve. And I just have to mirror the side stone over again, and I can group all of the stones together using the group tool into stones. And I'm going to hide my sketch. Okay, so I'm really happy with the body of the shank. The body of the ring. And all right, so let's jewel this thing up. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to show the side view plane and do a cut and delete to the shank, keeping the left side. Doesn't matter which side you keep. I chose to keep the left side. What is important is cutting the half shank into a quarter by the front view plane. And then we're going to extract this curve here. Validate. I can actually undo or roll back the cut and deletes because now I have the curve I need. So now I'm actually going to perform a modify curve. I'm not going to do anything to it except validate to the extract curve and then delete the extract curve because it's underneath the modify. Then I'm going to do a link to support to the shank to give orientation so the stones face upward. Validate there, and then I can actually delete the modify curve because it's under the link to support. Now I'm going to choose the link to support, and I'm going to use the channel tool. The stones are starting at the bottom of the curve, so I'm going to validate, and I'm going to go to my modify curve. This is why I applied the modify curve and I didn't do anything to it, and I'm going to reverse the direction of the curve. And reverse and validate. So when I recompute, now my stone channel is beginning from the top. Next up, for the stone sizes, I'm going to use 5 stones, but I am going to have them all be custom sizes. I'm going to put a margin on the top, bringing down the first stone to about there. And then I'm going to go into the third tab and adjust the height of the stones so that the girdles are on the surface, like so. So now I can really see what I'm working with. And I can go back to my stone sizes, go to my stone size list, and add 1 stone, change it to custom diameter, 2 millimeter, and add 4 more stones. Now individually I can go through and change the sizes to fit their position on the shank. 2 millimeter on the first one, second one will go 2.4 millimeter, third one will go 2.3 this time, 2.2, and 2.1. Now my concern is that this stone's going to be buried, but I'm going to keep moving and see how things progress. We can always adjust. I'm going to put a center stone in visually so we have something to jewel. And jewel it, and now I can delete that cutter channel, the channel cutter, because I don't need it. I already have its positions right there. I need to go into my sketch now, and I need to draw another cross section. I'm going to use symmetrical vertical tool, give myself 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, so 9 points this time. And I'm going to turn my grid snaps on and make this into the shape I'm going to use for my micro setting. I think I can delete 1 point, go down to 8. Yeah, that's much better. Maybe I'll get rid of 1 more. So I ended up with actually 7 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that should be good. We'll try this shape. We can always adjust it. I'm going to change the scale of it to 2 by 2, 2 by 2, and validate. So the tool I'm going to introduce now is called micro setting. I don't think I've ever used it before in the video demonstration series. And the way it works is with the stone positions of the channel and a cross section, the cross section we just drew. The micro setting tab is here, And you see it defaults to this oval shape and those positions. I'm going to change the curve to the new shape I just drew. And then positioning mode, I'm going to set to on stones. Now I have some scaling options here. For the width, I'm going to do 0.8, like so. And on the height, I'm going to do 0.7. And then I actually have a really cool option here to apply a bend angle. So I'm going to apply a bend angle of 90, and it actually bends these cross sections across the shank, like so. Validate here, and I'm going to Boolean out just to see how this looks. I'm going to undo this Boolean after. This is the shank coming through. I'll have to Boolean that later. Great, and I'm really happy with that cut. I'm going to undo it now, and we're going to continue to make our cutter. This is going to be a very advanced cutter. So I'm going to hide that jeweling, and I'm going to look at my stones from the side, and I'm going to make a traditional cutter, selecting that stone, and then choosing cutter. And this cutter I'm going to have be quite long, and the top is actually going to come up higher as well, like so. And we'll set the girdle to 0.6 and validate. Now I'm going to take that cutter and jewel it, like so. Validate. I do see I have a problem here with this cutter coming through the prongs, but I have an idea for how I'm going to deal with that. All I need to do is make it slightly longer, like so. It's not going to affect any of these, and this one will come out here. I'm going to make one more feature to this cutter, so I'm going to hide this and this, and I'm going to find my link to support that I did my jeweling on, or I did my stone channel on, and I'm going to use the sweeping wizard, and I'm going to choose a custom section. I'm going to go up. I have a shape that'll be useful, so let's find the shape that I want, and this round shape will work for me. So I'll show that, and I'll have it be the section. And now I'm going to use my scale tools and turn off keep ratio and turn this more into an oblong shape, like so. I'm going to change the alignment to middle and middle. I'm actually going to freeze the shank so you can see the cutter I'm making. Great. Change the depth of it slightly, like so. So we'll end up with, we'll say, a height of 0.7 and a width of 1.5. Add a second cross section, the same, and just bring it down to the last stone where you're going to want this cutter to end, and validate. So it's going all the way down, and that's because of the extracted curve went all the way down. So I think if I go back and change my modified curve, I can adjust this without affecting the stone. So let's click on trim and trim it from the very top here and bring it down just below where you want the stones to end. Validate. We'll recompute. Perfect. So I hope you see, by leveraging the parametric history like this, we can really make our models completely adjustable, creating a lot of efficiency in the design process. So last up, I'm going to do a multi-bulge to this cutter because I want it to come all the way up through the top of the shank. We'll multi-bulge this surface here, and we'll bring it up to that 1 millimeter default should do. Make sure it keeps it as a solid. It does. Yeah, it's going to give me a nice cut up through the top. And down here, I'm going to add a fillet as big as I can muster. Try 0.5. That's too big. So I'll go down to 0.3. And there we have it, a nice fillet. And that is going to be big enough. It's a pretty small feature anyhow. So these three elements, the micro cutter, the traditional cutters, and the sweep, are going to make up my Boolean cutters. And this is going to make my prongs and seats for the melee. Now I told you I had an idea about how to fix this cutter, and I'm going to use the filter tool, grab this, and create another subgroup. And I'm going to use the bend, go into advanced, and put a break in it. I'll go from here, and the break I'm going to put right there, and try to bend this down out of this groove, like so, and validate. Now if you look here, we had some issues with smoothness. I'll hide the shank so you can really see. And the way I adjust that is in break, I minimize the smoothing. It's kind of counterintuitive, but that should increase the smoothness there, and it did. That's going to work out perfect, I think. Yeah, I like that. So let's Boolean all of our cutters together, saving first. And we'll go ahead and rename this master cutter. Now I'm going to show my shank. I'm going to do a Boolean operation of the prongs and the shank. I'm going to mirror the master cutter to the other side. And now I'm going to do a Boolean subtraction of both of the cutters from the shank. And the result is pretty nice. But I am noticing that the shank is definitely too wide here. So we're going to try to adjust the first curve we made and see how these updates play out through this complex construction. Just changing the nature of the shank slightly. Bring it into 1.7, 2, and recomputing. Great, the recompute went really well. I think this illustrates how a well-constructed tree allows for more efficient recomputation. There is one issue that I see, but it's not from the shank, it's from the cross-section of the loft. And to fix that, I just need to find my loft. It will fix both of them. It will be under here, and center prong, left prong, and there are my lofts right there, left and right prong. And you see by naming them all, I can really find exactly where I want to be. So left prong was the first one I did, and here you have it. So we will take this last position, this one here, and we need to push it over towards the 0. So this is the correct direction here, and validate, recompute. And voila, look at that. That recompute went perfect as well. I'm still happy with my overlaps. I have a little hole right here that might give me a problem if I was going to mold this thing. I could adjust that by bringing this curve in, but I think I'm okay with it. But now I notice over in my tree, I have a warning. It says the left prong was moved slightly to avoid failure. So I'm going to make a reference object of that and make sure I'm comfortable with what it did. And I see it slightly moved it here. Yeah, I'm fine with it. Looks good. So I can delete that. It's just a warning, not a failure. We're good. I don't have any more of those. Happy with that. Let's show. Add a couple of last little details. We'll add a fillet. Try adding one to all of the holes. I'm going to try with the smallest fillet, 0.1. And hopefully that flies. Great, it added a nice fillet. I'm going to hide my entire sketch. Minimize that down. And let's hide these side stones. Take a look at the seats. Can delete that link to support now. I don't need it. Great. I'm happy with that. Let's go ahead and mirror the stones to the other side. Validate. And we can group all of the stones together now by just choosing the stone group, hitting the plus sign, adding the left jeweling and the mirror. Validate. The ring, I'm going to Boolean the fillet and the seats together. Call it production part. Validate. And there you have it, the Microset 3-stone ring. By building in the design efficiencies and keeping the tree clean and not repeating functions, we were able to create a model that's very parametric, and you're not going to encounter a lot of recalculation issues. Let's show one more example of that. If I was to take the Microset shape, double-click, go back in, get rid of a couple of these points, something more like this. This recomputation should go very smoothly. It's going to change all of these V-cuts to this rounded cut. So let's recompute. And voila, there you have it. We have changed the cuts to be this rounded shape. And that just illustrates the power of parametric history and the importance of design intent and tree optimization. Well, I really hope you've enjoyed the Microset ring. We have a lot more coming at you, and it's all available in the new video demonstration series section of the forum. Go on and reproduce this model, make some adjustments, export it as an SMB, and put the renderings up on the forum. Want to hear your questions and comments about this? As always, I'm Joshua St. John, 3Design NYC. Go make some beautiful stuff.